Welcome back to a brand new season of Rip It Up. Every renovation teaches you something, but it's only after you've lived through the dust, the delays and the decisions, and then done it again like me, that the real lessons appear. This season, we're revisiting our biggest renovation topics, not with theory, not with optimism, but with hindsight. Process, planning, lighting, kitchens, bathroom, windows, what worked, what didn't, and what we'd never do the same way again. This is What We Wish We Knew Then.
Welcome back to the podcast. Hi, Kate.
Ciao. How's your
Ciao.
How's your trip to Italy?
It was so good. It was
nice.
Italian food in Italy. Yeah. I think it's my favourite.
It's definitely my favourite cuisine. Definitely.
Like, unreal. We were up all over the place a bit. We were in Milan, we were in Cinque Terre, and then we were in Pavia, outside Milan for a couple of days, which is the home of risotto.
Nice.
Like kind of arboreal rice paddy fields are in there.
Wow.
I went to this risotto place and it was gorgonzola and orange risotto, and it's one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life.
That reminds me of the pizza from Kodiak. Isn't there one with like orange on it as well?
Pistachio with orange and mortadella, I think.
Yum,
it's my favourite in Dublin, I think.
So good. Oh,
it was great.
I love Italian food and a bottle of Barolo.
But I miss the good weather here. Yeah, I love it.
It was, yes, it was nice. I went down to Clare and then it was not so nice there. I was like freezing my ass off in a blanket on the beach. It kind of cleared up, but it wasn't as nice as Dublin. So I was kind of slightly regretting my decision, but it was also a nice, relaxing weekend. So not so
You never regret a weekend in Kilkee, though.
No, it was lovely. It was lovely. And the kids loved it. That's the main thing.
Yeah. This is, listener, the last in this series where we kind of went back over what we wish we knew then with kind of fresh eyes, fresh from Kate's third renovation. And so hopefully you found the series useful. We will be continuing on with the podcast, but this was kind of a 10-episode review of everything we know in finer detail.
Yeah.
With extra experience.
We do have a kind of cool episode. It's not necessarily linked, but it definitely is a run-on from this season, I think, coming next week as well. So, oh my God, definitely come for that one. That's going to be exciting.
With a special guest who everyone
will love.
Yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. So this is the final. We've kind of covered most of the, we've covered all the big items, some of the small items. And this one was a look back at the very end of your renovation on what can go wrong. Because things will go wrong. They always go wrong.
Yeah.
So this is what to do, what to expect, what your rights are, how to prevent it in the first place if you're just going into your renovation, or how to prepare yourself might even be better. Because, it's a big job. There's lots of moving parts. Things go wrong. So let's dive into it.
How to prepare yourself is actually such a good way of describing it, because in my opinion, things going wrong, like prevention is obviously better than cure, because the last thing you want is stuff major going wrong in your build. But good planning from the outset and good communication from the outset can hopefully prevent a lot of the major mistakes.
I think the word there for me is communication. I think it's so important. Like, it's the number one advice I always say. If anyone is like, how do I choose the right builder? Why do I find now? It's not like we have our pick of the litter at the moment because everyone's out the door. But I would always say, go with somebody who you have good communication with, whatever that means to you. Because it's really, I think that's the thing that makes everything work.
Yeah,
well.
And I think you said this a lot in our kind of renovation process episode, that you had like a good communication process with your contractor, your main contractor, and you had a rhythm of meetings and notes and whatever. And I always think, like, when things go wrong, one of the best things you can have is proof and some sort of record of what should be happening, or someone saying that something should be happening. Because if you've just said it verbally in a meeting, it can be lost. It can be lost in translation, and then it could just be forgotten about or whatever. And then it's your word, their word, whatever. So like communication and upfront communication is key. I kind of said to our builder early on this time, because we did have a little bit of an issue with our plumbing. They kind of forgot to do one pipe before they poured the concrete, which was a hot return, which is kind of like it's a cycling hot water thing around the house. And if you don't have that, it can take like 2 minutes for a hot water tap to heat up then in a complex system, So anyway, they forgot to put that in. A little bit of a disaster because, it's in our concrete floor. So we had to kind of go around the outside of the house. And anyway, we got to a solution, but we kind of said straight away, well, it was actually Cian, my husband, said it straight away. He said, can you just look, we've no problem if something is forgotten or something is missed or there's a problem, but just be upfront and we'll work through the solution together. We'll come up with something that everyone's happy with. And I think if you go all guns blazing, angry when there's a mistake made, the next mistake will be covered up. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And because you're developing a culture, and we always said it that you have to approach this like it is a job, and you have to approach it like a working relationship, which includes management and stakeholders. And like, I know those words are horrible, but you have to treat it that way. And I think the thought that everything should go perfect and that you get annoyed if it doesn't really help, unless it's a constant like disaster. Then fair enough, get annoyed. But you'll know yourself when you're going through a renovation. There's so many decisions to be made. There's so many texts back and forth. There's little changes of mind. There's loads and loads and loads of things to keep track of. And with the best will in the world, like your contractor and your tradespeople are just not looking at their phone all the time. Like they're getting on with the job at hand. And it is not that hard to miss something, relatively small that turns into something big down the line. Yeah. So I think that's such a good point, especially at the outset. If you notice something is missed, take it in good faith that it was by accident and create that culture where if it does get missed again, it can be picked up and fixed and you move forward and it's not this big, huge blowout every time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think especially when you have maybe junior trades working on your site, if they get an absolute bollocking because you gave the main contractor an absolute bollocking, they will hide the next one. So I just think, having that nicer open relationship with your contractor and your trades, but also staying on top of them a little bit, having that good record, like you said, and the rhythm of meetings and being on site. And I know they'll probably hate to see you, but that you're popping into site, at a certain time and day every week or something, just to see those big things. And when you're at those site meetings, I find if a floorboard is up and there's piping down, or the underfloor pipes are down but they haven't poured the screed yet, take some bloody pictures.
Take pictures.
No harm in you having a picture record as well, because once that concrete's poured, or once the floorboards are down, or the floor is laid, or carpets are down, or whatever, very hard to pull proof then when stuff goes wrong. So I think take those pictures, take the pictures of wires behind walls or whatever it is, before things are covered over.
Because you can't x-ray your house, right? Not reasonably. Like if something is covered up, with the best will in the world, like you could get a surveyor or an engineer or whatever to come in and check something afterwards, but they can't see through walls or see through floors. So what I used to do was I would go in every Friday. I would have a list of things, kind of points that I was like, this is what's coming up, or this has been decided, or this has changed, or whatever it might be. And then my contractor would have, now we'd be back and forth a little bit during the week as well, but we kind of try and keep it like that, one-on-one time, and then he'd be saying, okay, I need this from you now, I need this ordered, or we've come up against this, we need a decision on that, or can we do this way, or whatever it might be, or, I have a suggestion or a change or whatever. Yeah. And then we would go through that and I'd be taking notes and he'd be taking notes, and I would always email that over to him then at the end of the day. And I had an architect as well, so I'd just keep him a copy. And then at least that record was there for my own mind, because I don't remember all the decisions I've made unless it's written down. My brain is not perfect, far from. And that I found that so helpful. And it just meant then everything could kind of come out really honestly as well. If that he wouldn't nobody was going off in one and making decisions on their own. Now it was hard. This was like pre-COVID when most of the work was being done. So that did mean, trying to fly over at lunchtime on a Friday. There was no working from home back then. So I'm really conscious that it's not possible for everyone to take that much time and go in every week. But if you can at all, or you can divide and conquer or whatever between you if you're a couple, it makes a huge, huge difference to be on site.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. And also remember that getting the notes down is important for you maybe to remember them, but this is your house, so you'll remember every single detail. Every single room, the sizes, things. You'll probably know the windows you're picking, but also know these contractors and trades that are working in your house, or you could be one of 5 jobs that are going at the same time. So for them to remember all those 5 jobs to the level of detail that your house is unlikely. So I think, the more records you have, the better.
And I also think in these cases, a lot of times assumptions are made. You might assume that your builder is going to do something some way, or they might assume that you want something done another way that they normally do it. And your perception of what your house is going to be has been formed in, you know, whatever you've seen, whatever you've done, whatever you're used to, whatever you liked from your previous houses, whatever. And theirs is similar but different from their own job and their own experience. So like as clear as you possibly can, like, this is what I want, this is why. And then I think take their opinion, especially if you trust them on certain things, like I did, and it worked out really well for me, but I trusted my builder, so
that's worth it
to do.
So can I tell you, like, my biggest thing that went wrong, I suppose, in both my builds? Usually it's plumbing, actually, in old houses, and this isn't to diss plumbers, but just old houses and plumbing is complicated. There's old systems that have to be retrofitted or completely replumbed, and then you've a lot of nooks, and you've different levels, and you've return landings, and you've attic spaces maybe, and it just doesn't lend itself very well to air and water potentially mixing. So, like, we had a lot of issues in our last build. Before we had paid our retention, our plumbing was just cutting out when we had a newborn baby, which was not ideal. Anyway, like, I think for rectification of those kind of things, you have to get the professionals involved if you're not getting much luck directly with your contractor.
Yeah.
And the same went when we had dodgy windows in our last build, that, like, you lay it out for the main contractor, keep your professionals, if it's an interior designer, interior architect, or an architect, or an engineer, or whatever, keep them in the loop. Even if you're not asking them to do anything at this stage, keep them in the loop so they have the full story, they have the timeline, they have everything. And then, like, if you're not getting luck...
And so it's not so easy for someone to fob you off if all those people are in view. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I think, you know, when those professionals are involved, you'll have a bit more weight behind you. The likelihood of, you know, contractors and whatever paying heed and coming back and fixing things and acting with a bit of efficiency and whatever is probably more likely. Like, we got the stuff rectified, but it took a while, but it would have been impossible, I think, without, you know, our architect involved, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that's such a good point, just because they might ignore you, partly because they're really busy, but partly because there might not be, you might just give up, and there might not be direct consequences if they just ignore you and fob you off. Yeah. But there will be if they're, as you said, like, if there's an architect that they work with a lot, or
and you always have to have a comeback, right? Like, for having a contractor, you have a retention, so you'll hold back a certain percentage of your building costs for a certain amount of time to make sure you've no major defects in the build. But, like, remember, retention is kind of negotiable as well. You know, they'll come back with their first, you know, percentage that they want to hold.
5% or 3%.
Yeah, and you'll say, no, I want 12%. I want, you know, and you might land on 8% or whatever, and you might land on 8% for 12 months or 8% for 6 months or whatever. So that is a negotiation. It depends on your build, depends on your builder, all that. But, you know, cover yourself there. And I think when you're at 5% of a build, like, they mightn't want to be bothered coming back. They're back onto the next build. They mightn't. Yeah. So make sure that retention is worth them coming back. And same for, like, paying big down payments for, like, I told you, our windows were absolute shite last time, and the handle broke off and bars are misaligned. So lucky that we actually were only asked by them to pay 50%, and then the other 50% was on delivery. And we never paid them the other 50%. And because the windows were so bad, the guy wouldn't come back.
And so he was like, whatever, just keep...
He just didn't bother. He didn't reply to the architect. He didn't reply to our contractor. Nothing. So we couldn't actually get him to come back. So some of the bits that were absolutely, you know, we couldn't live with, as in leaking roof lights, stuff like that, we had to get a third party in to kind of try fix it, which a lot of people don't want to touch windows when they're not their own. But thankfully, we had only paid that guy 50%. So, like, we had a bit of comeback there. So just cover yourself that way. Just make sure that there's some retention on every big ticket item you're either paying for or with your contractor or trades or whatever.
Yeah. And another thing as well is, like, don't, in that communication, when you do spot something like that, like, say it ASAP. Yeah. Like, just bring it up. Just say it. Take photos of whatever. Maybe it's nothing, like, but if you wait the weekend, you're like, oh, I don't know now. I don't want to, they're busy. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, you know, sorry to ask now. Sorry about this. But just don't do that. Just say it straight away, because things get harder and harder to fix with every passing hour and day, because things get covered up and concrete gets poured and something gets sealed and glue gets put in or sealant or whatever. Like, just say it straight away. So there's some things that are really easy to fix, you know, early on.
Yeah, and
that
to
are
your
potentially impossible to fix a day or two
why don't
later.
you tell your, like you mentioned before about the underfloor
Oh
potentially being
yeah,
missed.
this is just such a good example of something that is so easy to miss because there's a million things going back and forth. But I wanted underfloor heating in my downstairs. The floor was coming up anyway because the floor was dropped to add on a dormer extension upstairs. And I came in one day and they were about to pour the concrete on the underfloor and the ground floor, and I was like, where are the pipes for the underfloor heating? And they're like, what are you talking about? We've ordered the radiators. Thank God I was in to see it.
Yeah.
Because it was just something simple that was missed. It was fixable because thank God that concrete hadn't been poured yet. Or
Yeah.
did I even see radiators? I think that was it. Concrete hadn't been poured and I was like, what are those radiators for? And they're like, for the downstairs. I was like, there's no radiators, it's underfloor.
Yeah.
So thank God it was fixable. The floor was open anyway. But if that had been a day later and I hadn't said anything and I was like, I thought it was underfloor, and like waited to email or whatever.
You second guess yourself sometimes. You're like,
you do.
maybe I just don't know what's going on here. Maybe this is the way it's meant to look at this stage. But if you're not sure, just ask the question. Be like, is this the way it looks before underfloor, or when does the underfloor come in? Just say some obvious point like that then the penny will drop with them and be like, oh, no, there is underflow going on here, or whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, and they're like,
you know,
get
just
the pipes.
or like the pipes might be coming out of the wall rather than the floor for radiators or something like that. You know, those
Yeah.
kind of things that just say it. If you see it, say it. Say what you see. Say what you see. But like, it's so important to just like, don't let it go on an extra day or two, because it's amazing how a build can move on in a day or two, and you haven't said anything. It's too late.
Don't be dancing around it. Don't be aggressive about it. Like, just don't be too apologetic and sorry now. Just say it. Just be direct. I think.
Yeah.
Almost every contractor and tradesperson I know appreciates it when you're just direct and just say it.
Yeah.
Like, not accusatory or anything. Like, just, what's the story here? I thought it was this.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if you've established a relationship where it's fine to say, oops, we missed that, this can be fixed, or let's fix it together, then you're way likely to get it, way more likely to get a much better result.
Yeah.
So what else? Did you have any other major
Mainly
issues?
plumbing stuff. So our boiler kept dropping pressure last time. This time the pipe for that kind of heat, whatever, circulation kind of thing was missed. So like, we did have to work through kind of solutions and alternate solutions, and they were saying, oh, we'll run a pipe on the outside of your house. And I was like, that doesn't sound very efficient. Like, I'm pumping hot water on the outside of my house in an uninsulated ground. Like, so we had to really think on our feet, and I had to get a bit of advice from a QS that we worked with, like, to say, what's our best alternate here? So we did this kind of, thermally lagged pipe or whatever outside, so it was zero heat loss for that loop. We had to put in an extra loop. Look, it wasn't ideal. We had to pull up some paving slabs and whatever, but it was an extra day's work in the grand scheme of things, and we got it rectified. But if we hadn't said anything or said like, no, that was meant to be in this floor, why wasn't it done? That pipe could have gone in without us knowing, and we could have been losing so much heat. I think us working together and being like, okay, let's just come up with a solution together, we'll figure it out, I think paved the way for a better solution in the end. So just that kind of directness, like you said, upfrontness, and that kind of being calm rather than losing the handle on what could have been a big issue otherwise.
And not to over communicate, but just don't be making assumptions that they know what you're talking about, or you know what they are intending to do.
Yeah.
There's one thing that came up recently, actually, and it's not necessarily a mistake, but it's just one for kind of prevention against mistakes, is that it's getting more and more common to use the metal, the metal studs, partition studs.
Okay.
So normally you'd put in, normally the way a wall is built is that you put in timber,
battens,
straight timber battens, and then plasterboard gets nailed onto those. And then what that's handy for is, if you're a homeowner, you will look to, if you want to hang something heavy, like heavy shelves, like bookshelves, or like a really heavy mirror, or like something like that, or our wardrobes, our Elfa wardrobes, you will look to screw in directly into those studs.
Sure, yeah.
Because they can take so much weight, and off you go. But it's more and more common now, because it's so much more efficient and makes more sense, to use metal studs instead. So there's just these thin kind of metal rails that basically clip into place, And then the same thing happens, the plasterboard goes up. But why that's important is because you don't necessarily then have the studs to be hanging your heavy items off, and that's not the end of the world. You can still put in supports behind them. But all this to say is a mistake that you could prevent if you see that there's metal studs going up in your walls as you're on your site visit. Make sure that your builder knows and that you know where you're planning to hang heavy stuff so that they can put in that support. So what they typically do then is put in like wood, paneling or something like that in between, screwed into each of these metal studs. That will allow you to hang heavy stuff. So if you're putting up a heavy TV, hanging a TV, make sure they know exactly where you're planning to put that TV bracket. If you're hanging, a heavy mirror, or you're attaching
an egg chair to the ceiling.
An egg chair to the ceiling, or if you're
we marked our joist before we slabbed out, so we took pictures of the joist and we took a measurement of the joist to the edge of the wall just so we knew where we were drilling. Otherwise you have to drill about 20 million pilot holes to find it.
And you've ruined your ceiling. And it's all fixable, right? And you can come back and do things. What they do is they cut into a bit of plasterboard and they'll put in like a metal support or a wooden support, a beam support into the back of it, and you can hang it up again. So it's not the end of the world, but it does mean a bit of like repainting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So all that to say is an easy way that you can prevent a mistake if you're coming up to your renovation. If you see them putting in those metal studs, plan early on where you're planning to hang heavy things like bookshelves, your TV, and maybe a heavy mirror. Everything else is kind of, plasterboard can actually take a bit of weight.
Quite a bit with roll plugs, yeah.
Yeah, but just know.
So when you move back in then, right, so a lot of these kind of mistakes and things that have happened are kind of during the build and working through those problems. And when you move back in, I guess there's going to be a bit of things that you're not sure are mistakes or not, I guess, like settlement of the building, slight cracking. If you get really heavy rain like we did in the first few months of this year, was the perfect test for our house because we knew if it was going to leak or not, the roof, the new parts of the roof and all that, so stuff like that will really test the house. So look, some of these things happen, sometimes a tiny bit of seal on some sort of new roof mightn't have been done perfectly.
Doors are a bit wonky on their hinges or something that's going a bit funny.
They're not the end of the world thing, but these are the things to watch out for when you move in. When you've had really heavy rain, do a walkthrough of the houses when that really heavy rain is hitting or just soon after, and just see in any of the rooms, does any of the ceiling look wet or any of the door seals not sealing or window seals or whatever. So just those checks, and then at least you're catching them as soon as you can. So you have more comeback, with your trades.
And it'll depend on your attention. And some things will take a few days or weeks or months probably to come in. And there's going to be cracks in your walls, just those little hairline cracks in your walls. It's all normal. It's probably better off, you can fix it whenever, but it's probably better off to fix it, once the crack isn't getting any bigger, as soon as possible, because then you can paint over it and the paint it won't be as likely to show up as new paint against your existing paint, which might have changed colour with wear and tear and sun and all that kind of stuff. Leaks definitely get somebody back in. Sorry, I actually totally forgot. I did have a massive mistake in that I went to have a bath upstairs and my downstairs bedroom flooded, my downstairs office. All the water came through the lampshade in the downstairs bedroom, and what had happened was the overflow trap hadn't been connected to the waste pipe. So that was a bit of a disaster, but they came back and fixed it straight away. It was doable, but so anything like that. Another thing, actually, my builder came back for. He was brilliant. He came back for everything, any little, any door that was off its hinges a bit or whatever. He came back and touched it all up. But one thing that he did come back and fix was there was this mad dripping noise. So anytime after it rained, if I was upstairs in my bedroom, there'd just be this really loud drip, drip, drip
from your
drip.
From your down pipe.
God,
your rain down pipes.
It was so annoying. I couldn't.
That
sleep
happens
with it,
all the new aluminium ones, in my opinion.
It's so annoying.
So the old ones, especially in the old houses, were the cast iron kind of rain guttering, and it's heavier duty, whereas the aluminium is a bit thinner. It kind of looks the same, but it has a real tinny noise when there's a drip. And this has happened to me in both my houses, I think. I usually shove a dish sponge in the bottom of it.
Yeah, or
and
you
then
can
the rain drip.
Hang a little chain from it.
Yeah. So I just put a dish sponge in the bottom of mine, and then the drip hits that rather than the bottom of the aluminium every time. Ding, ding, ding. ding. So like, yeah, that's definitely a watch out. Not necessarily flow, it's just new materials are a bit tinny.
It's a feature.
Like
These
that.
are kind of features that you can expect, you know.
Yeah.
And just keep a record of them and get your contractor back to just do it all in one, ideally. Like you can just, if he's in the area, like they'll swing, or she.
And if you're not sure if things are a flaw or fault, like photograph it first. But use like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI you use and just say, take a picture of something and be like, I just did my house. Does this look normal? Should my boiler be doing this? Is this the right setting? Is this whatever? Like just debug it a little bit yourself. And then you're kind of a bit more armed with the information. You have the photos, you have whatever. And then if it looks like it still is a problem, absolutely reach out to your contractor and see if you can get it fixed. But I would say act with a bit of haste as much as you can. Like obviously some of these kind of flaws don't surface immediately, depending on when you move back in, summer, winter, whatever. But like I think try and get to some of these things sooner rather than later.
Especially if it's water, anything water or electrical. Like if your heating isn't coming on the way it should be, or it's not getting as hot as quickly as it should, or there's anything faulty with any of your electrics, that is like an immediate get somebody back straight away, because those problems tend to propagate.
Yeah. And in terms of like guarantees, I suppose, I think like major renovation works, you usually have like a good comeback for kind of, you know, tweaks and general, what would you call it? Like good
Snags.
Workmanship kind of thing for like 6 to 12 months. But then beyond that, depending on specific warranties around actual appliances and boilers, and that might be way extended. But the actual workmanship of the build might be up to 12 months. But then if you think there's been...
They brought in something, it's 2022, I think it was the Consumer Protection Act covers that now. So there is an expectation of, you know, your contractor has to deliver, you know, up to standard workmanship, whatever. So if you're really having serious issues, and it is a couple of years after your house, and it's directly related to the renovation or the build or whatever, new builds are separate. New builds are covered generally by new bond insurance. I think that's even up to 10 years potentially, which is a lot. But if it's a renovation, you do have some recourse if there was like clearly a serious issue in the way that the person carried out the work. There is some recourse there under the Consumer Protection Act.
Yeah. Probably for years, is there?
I think it's up to 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I think it might depend on the type of issue.
Especially if there are repeat problems, right? Like your contractor kept coming back and they said, well, I tried to fix it and it keeps happening, whatever it is. So again, keep your record of things. And if you're really not happy with it, then, you know, maybe that's your route to go.
Yeah. Document everything. And this is again where photos help. Like every Friday when I was coming in to meet my contractor, I would kind of for Instagram, but like I would like walk around the house and just take a video and a photo of everything. It really helps just to have
It's amazing how much you refer to it after the fact. It is amazing. Like pictures of your skeletal version of your house are so important. Take them, save them, put them in a favorites folder or whatever, like, because you will go back to them after the fact.
Know where like connections are, where joists are, where studs are. It's really helpful.
So like I guess to round up, have proof, take all the pictures you can. Cover your arse with a bit of a retention or a guarantee or some stage payment and negotiate that, whether it's with your main contractor or with other kind of big suppliers of things. And communication is key.
Communication. And then if things really go pear-shaped, right, if you can just not get the issue fixed and you know there is an issue there and they're just not coming back to you, there are some avenues. So the steps, you should like write to your like email, whatever, to your contractor and outline what's going on, clear documentation again. But then you can, you know, there's routes through like professional bodies, the trade bodies, Safe Electric for electricians, typically the CIRI or the Construction Federation of Ireland for any kind of building works. Plumbers can be, not as straightforward with that, but if there's any gas involved or heating involved, the RGI group. So there's avenues, and there is the Consumer Protection Commission as well. There's a small claims court if you really want to take legal action. But all of this starts with keeping documentation of everything. Make sure you have a trail of like written requests to get this fixed with evidence, and then, you know, go through potentially the trade body route of submitting a complaint, get a report, get a professional opinion on it, and then you know, there are legal avenues if the person hasn't scarpered.
Hopefully they won't.
Hopefully they won't. Like most of them out there are trying to do their best to do a good job. Small mistakes are totally normal, and they just, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Communication, documentation.
Communication is key.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Please tune in next week because we have a very exciting guest. We're not even going to tell you who it is yet, but it's going to be so good. Especially if you're just finishing your renovation. Or maybe even just about to move out for yours.
Or just living in a house in general. You're going to love
it.
Yeah. See you next week.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
If you found this episode helpful, please hit subscribe, give us a few stars, and best of all, send it to someone else who you think would like it so they can subscribe too. Thank you.